No, my hi there, my welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar as part of Organic Week 2026, organised by the Soil and Health Association. And this webinar tonight is called What's Behind the Label? So it's all about food labels, potentially other labels, but we're focusing on food. And yeah, how you can decipher them, not spend so long in the supermarket trying to figure out what is in that food. Yeah, so we have two panelists with us today who are going to give you some tips. First of all, we have Alison White from the Safe Food campaign, uh, and also a life member of Soil and Health. Welcome, Alison. And our other panelist is Sarah Reddington from Low Toxin Rabbit, who investigates all sorts of low tox tips for everyday living, not just food, but other things like clothing, makeup, toiletries, skincare, all of that kind of thing. A wealth of information. So yeah, welcome everybody, and also my name's Philippa Jamieson. I'm the editor of Organic NZ Digital Publishing. With us tonight is Charles Hyland, who's the chair of the Soil and Health Association, and Charles will be monitoring the chat. And perhaps, yeah, if as we go along, please put any questions in the chat and feel free to introduce yourselves, say who you are, where you're from, any particular topics that you are interested in, whether it's ingredients lists, organic logos, that kind of thing. And that would be great to have. Now, I realise that labeling is a huge topic, and we've only got an hour tonight, so we're not going to be able to cover everything. But that's why I really want you to put your questions and concerns or whatever your issues in the chat so that we can perhaps do further webinars or other such information sharing so that people have really good information, because we all want to eat healthy food and avoid all the nasties. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alison White, who will talk for about 15 minutes, and then followed by Sarah, and then we'll have questions. So, welcome, Alison.
Thank you, Philippa, and it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to talk briefly about the Safe Food campaign. First of all, we're nationwide and we deal with a number of different issues, not just additives, which we're dealing with tonight, but also pesticides, fluoride, things to do with food and water, basically. Um, and so you're very welcome to visit our website, safefood.org.nz, and see the range of things that we cover. So I'm now going to share. Um, I want to briefly talk about FSANZ and what is FSANZ Food Standards Australia, New Zealand. And this is the organisation covering both Australia and New Zealand that controls labelling requirements, what you need to put on the label. And as you can see, perhaps from the slide, there are a number of different things that should be on the label to help you as a consumer. But I'm going to draw your attention tonight to two in particular, the ingredient list and the nutrition information panel. You can look at other things like country of origin labeling, and I would encourage you to, if possible, if you choose any processed food, to try and support New Zealand. So let's check an ingredient list. And this particular one is 2-minute noodles. And lots of people consume 2-minute noodles. And you can see that there's ingredients in the flavor sachet is where all the problem additives are. Flavor enhancers, 621, which is monosodium glutamate or MSG, 627, 631. Chicken flavor, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, which is another name for monosodium glutamate. It's a form of manufactured free glutamate. These additives cause problems. Now, you may be surprised at the inclusion of yeast extract, which is another name for manufactured free glutamate. And I could go a lot more into the disadvantages of MSG or glutamate or the Asians call it Ajinomoto. Um, but there's more on our website that you can have a look at. Maltodextrin is a type of sugar, and I just want to briefly mention this color. This 160B, sometimes called annatto, is a natural color. But the problem is, I think it might be the way that it's made, but it causes problems, especially in children, and people react to them. So apart from ingredients, the other thing that you should always look at is the nutrition panel. And if you've got two products in front of you at the supermarket and you want to know which one do I choose, you can always look at the sugar and under per 100 gram, because this gives you the percentage of sugar. So in this particular product, it's 11% sugar, which doesn't sound too bad, except that it's also got erythritol, which is a sort of as a sweetener. It's a wood alcohol sweetener. Um, so apart from those two things, this is the main slide that I want to show you, additives to avoid. Now you don't have to frantically scribble down everything on the slide. I would encourage you to go to our website. We've got a fact sheet that you can download and consult on our website. There's another website which is very good, which gives lots of individual stories as well as quoting lots of research. And this is an Australian website with Sue Dengate, fedup.com.au. And this has a wealth of information on it. And there are so many stories about children especially, but also adults reacting to these additives. These additives are simply the worst of the worst. They're not necessarily all the bad things, because people do react to other things as well, but these are the worst of the worst. And you'll notice that I've put some in red. 160B, we've already mentioned, as a natural colouring, but people react to it. A number of preservatives people react to, and a common side effect to preservatives especially is asthma. Propionates I've got in red, and these are natural ingredients, but they manufacture them so they become, you take in far in excess of what is natural into your body. So these are used to preserve bread. It's not in every bread, but it may be disguised, and we'll come to that later, the sort of names that it may be disguised as. We've got 621, which I've already mentioned, along with MSG, and 635, which is what they call a ribonucleotide, and a lot of people react to that. There's what they call the ribo rash. Artificial sweeteners, they're all a problem, but the most notorious is aspartame or 951. Now, the most complained about additives in history are these two, MSG and aspartame. Um, Antioxidants, some of them collect in the body, 319 collects in the body, for example. Flavors sounds innocuous, especially when it's labeled natural. Some of them are labeled artificial, some of them are labeled natural, but be suspicious of any flavor added, whether it's natural or artificial, because these are untested and unregulated. So, for example, a, a flavor, something that says flavor, may actually contain MSG. MSG is added to make it taste better. It doesn't have enough flavor by itself, so manufacturers add MSG or the manufactured free glutamates to make it taste better. Um, Now I'll go to this slide, flavors, natural foods in unnatural amounts. So we've got four examples of ultra processed food. And our advice, of course, is to avoid these things. You won't be able to see it, but underneath each package or three packages, we've got lists of ingredients. What is what you can see about all of them is that they all have on the front something about, and again, you may not be able to make this out, something about natural flavor. And this one, the Ben's egg fried rice, that says no artificial flavors and um, colors. So it sounds good. And then the lollies on the right say no artificial colors, no artificial flavors. So it all sounds very good. But the problem is that the things that they put in may sound innocuous. I mean, fruit juice concentrate, potato, chicken may sound all right, but it's not the original form. I mean, in the case of potato and rice, for example, it's just a dried up form that's been extracted and extruded. So you're not getting, it's much better, for example, to have real potatoes along with the chicken if you want it, and not a package. It's easy, of course, to get the package. Um, and we get unnatural amounts of these foods, which can cause some people to react to them. And they can be very high in natural salicylates and amines and glutamates. So these are all different types of protein amino acid forms, and people can react to them, especially taking in a processed food form like this. Now, my last slide before I hand over to Sarah is there is a tendency, as we could see from the uh, processed food before, to make it sound all natural. And there are no actual numbers apart from the percentages of the ingredients, because the actual numbers have been taken away. So there is this, oops. So there is this trend from manufacturers to remove the numbers and to remove chemical sounding names. And this is what we as consumers have to be aware of when we buy. If it says on the front, free from, no artificial flavors, colors, whatever, all natural, no added, whatever, be suspicious. And you get innocent sounding names like cultural whey and fermented wheat, which are forms of propionate, which is the bread preservative to stop the bread going moldy when it's warm in a plastic bag. So be very suspicious of this because this is propionates in an unnatural form. It's not bound up with the other ingredients in whole foods. I mean, in the case of MSG, this has got lots of different names. And if you look on our website, you can see the different names for MSG, which you have to be aware of. Yeast extract sounds innocuous enough. And this is something that you may think is sounds all right, and the manufacturers try to get it to sound all right, but you have to be aware, you have to be wary. So now I'm going to hand over.
Thank you, Alison. That's yes, it's really interesting that, even though things are said to be natural flavors or natural colors, yeah, there's still things to be aware of. Yes. Very good. All right, now we'll quickly go straight to Sarah, and that's great. Keep putting your questions and comments and so on in the chat if you would like. That's really good. Keep them coming. Welcome, Sarah. Please tell us a bit about yourself and yeah, go.
So I'm Sarah from Low Toxin Rabbit, and I'm basically mostly present on social media, and I like to share a lot about what we learn on our day-to-day journey in terms of reducing our toxic load. And reducing my toxic load just quickly has transformed my life. It's truly transformed my health, and I hope that the information I share can actually be useful and helpful to people to find like safer, better products. And I suppose I could do like a plug for my directory as well. I've got a low tox directory where I screen all the products that go on there to make it easier for people to find safer products, because there is so much greenwashing out there in terms of products and what's actually safe and not. The marketing is very, very clever, as you probably know, Philippa, as well. But anyway, we've heard some really amazing information from Alison, and we've got an escalating baby, Philippa. Do you mind if I just quickly grab him? Sorry, guys.
Oh, yes.
On
Okay.
errands, but my husband is picking up children, etc., and he is escalating. So I'll just go grab him, and
Yep.
then maybe we can chat. Is that okay? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Just while Sarah's tending to her baby, speaking of babies, I just saw a question in the chat about why did they make it a law to add folic acid to bread? Now, folic acid was added to bread, I can't remember exactly when, in the last 10 years or so, probably, except for organic bread and flatbreads. Those are the exceptions. And the reason given was to reduce the number of babies born with neural tube defects, predominantly spina bifida. Now, the babies born with those sorts of things probably didn't get enough folic acid in the womb. So that was deemed to be a way of trying to reduce those birth defects. However, of course, folic acid is in lots of foods, especially fresh green leafy vegetables, which we all need to be eating more of, in my opinion. So, yeah, hope that answers your question. All right, we'll hand back to you, Sarah.
Yeah, sorry guys for the interruption. It's the mum juggle of a 7 month old, but Thomas is making an appearance. Hi, Thomas. He's going to one day be like, I know an awful lot about label reading, and I don't know why. But anyway, so we're just going to crack into it. So Alison's given us some great information. So what do we do with that? How do we make healthier choices? How do we choose healthier food? So I've kind of got some rules that I follow in terms of making better choices. And so one of the first rules that I follow is the gold standard is if you can go for minimally processed whole food. So often I get lots of people say, oh, but I don't have time to make stuff. And I totally understand that. I get that. I don't have a lot of time too, juggling 4 kids and homeschooling. But things like cut up fruit, they are in their natural state and you can't get better. So a platter is often what we will do for morning tea in terms of just choosing whole foods. And the kids are really happy with it because this is what they're having on a regular basis. And I feel like it sounds like 101, but some people just don't think they need to go about making this elaborate kind of food to make it unprocessed, but actually simple is often best. And also in terms of, I kind of wanted to give an example of like when you're choosing processed foods. So this is an example of a highly processed food, and on the front package, so Alison has alluded to a lot of the marketing. It says on here, which you might not be able to say, it says 25% of your daily calcium needs. Now this actually needs to be fortified with calcium to actually have that level of calcium, because it's so processed, it's so depleted of any nutrients that they need to add them back in. And there is processing problems with people in terms of processing those synthetic vitamins. They're just not like the real sources, basically. So that's like a prime example of how nutrient depleted food is. So therefore they need to add it back in. And number 2 is, my other rule is less is more. So you want to be going for smaller ingredient lists. So for instance, I picked these up from the supermarket, something I typically would never buy, but this is marketed to kids. It looks healthy. It's got some fruit in it, so that sounds great. But then when you go to the back of the package, there's like, I counted roughly 30 ingredients in this, and most of them, even myself, I would have to Google and look up. So that is kind of what you want, is lesser ingredients. So Tom and Luke's, this packaging here, this is often in our cupboard as a quick go-to snack for lunch boxes, and that contains really simple ingredients that you can understand. So dates, peanuts, cocoa powder, peanut butter, sea salt, and coconut. Like, we all know what those things are, so definitely go for less is more. The shorter the ingredient list, generally the healthier it is. That's sort of like the rule of thumb, and you need to ask yourself, hey, how close is it to its natural state? And Thomas is going to say good night again. Good night, guys. Okay, awesome. And then the next step that I would choose is, I would choose number 3 is choosing ingredients you understand. So similar to the Tom and Luke's, that you know what they are. You don't have to Google them. You don't have to go through some deciphering way of working out what it is. And just kind of like another great examples of options that are often like, these are ones just from our pantries that are often really easy to understand. So this is from Nature Kids, and it's sweet potato and spinach. And when you turn it over to the back, it's, you can't probably see that, but it says sweet potato and spinach. And the same with the wafer rolls. Again, I can understand everything in them: coconut cream, rice flour, golden syrup, egg, sesame, and sea salt. So really simple ingredients, and they're easy to understand. I don't need to go refer to Google or any app even to say whether or not they're processed, well, whether or not they're ingredients I'm aware of or know of, or with numbers and things like that.
And
And
it's organic, I noticed.
yes, we choose organic where we can, definitely. Like, in terms of reducing our pesticide load, I know that often it can be challenging for people, but we choose as much as we can within our budget that is organic, just so that we're doing our best to reduce our toxic load. So most of the time the kids do get great things like these series coconut rolls as a treat. They're not like a major big part of our diet, but they're like a nice treat to pop in their lunch. Particularly with Thomas, I haven't had any time for baking, so this kind of replaces that. And also, my other point is number 4. Sorry, guys, I've lost my track with Thomas, but I think there's like this really big thing at the moment where we need to be really mindful of sugars. So I don't know if anyone else has noticed like me, but everything is containing sugars at the moment. It is incredible. Like, so you've got hot chips that contain sugar under dextrose or fructose, and what's important to note about those ingredients too is that they're often derived from GMO corn. And I don't think, as mums or as any human being, mum, dad, single person, I don't think we really realize that these are GMO derived, like highly processed food often contain GMO derived ingredients. So that includes things like dextrose, fructose, glucose, just to kind of name some sugar examples. And they're derived from corn. And so what's been actually found in pieces of research is that the corn is genetically modified to produce its own insecticide, essentially. And they've found that insecticide in people that consume GMO corn into their blood, so the blood of pregnant women as well as the fetus. And then there is animal studies that have shown that it actually impacts kidney function. It's toxic to kidneys, it's toxic to your liver, so your key detoxification systems, and then obviously that comes with other ramifications from that. So that's a really big negative of eating processed foods and having these secret added sugars in, because often they are from GMO derived ingredients. So, and they're in absolutely everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of things, like even just going through the supermarket today, hot chips, cold chips, even in some of these items that I've got here, like these are well-being, and they actually contain 6 hidden sugars in these things, and they're called well-being, like they're for your well-being. So that's quite clever marketing on their part. And again, and 30 ingredients in this, so it's quite complex. And so you really want to be avoiding any of those hidden sugars if you can, and just going for things that you understand. If it says sugar or golden syrup, you know exactly what that is. So yeah. And my final point, or like not, sorry, my second to last point is the marketing. And we've kind of covered that a little bit. So I found these at the supermarket and they look great. They're a great source of protein and high in fiber. But when you actually go and take a look at the label, you will find that there is actually more sugar in these than there is protein. And I know that there's like a big buzz in terms of protein at the moment, like got to have my protein, but often a lot of these bars, particularly protein bars, are actually very, very heavy in sugar, much like the muesli bars that are seen as healthy, but in fact they're just as bad as eating a chocolate bar. So that's kind of like one point, is that I guess always make sure that the front claims of these packaging actually matches what the ingredient list says. So don't look at the front face label and go, oh, that's healthy. You always need to verify and take a look at the back. And that's kind of my go-to when I'm checking these things. And then my final, which we've kind of touched on, Philippa, is that the gold standard is choosing organic products where you can. So knowing that, because there's plenty of research out there. There's actually a Kiwi study that found that 80% of children, they found in samples of 80% of children, pesticides in their urine. And that's higher than 6 times higher than many other Western countries. So that's pretty alarming. So we want to be doing what we can to reduce our toxic load, and particularly our exposure to pesticides. And children are particularly vulnerable to these toxins as well. There's well established that they are, a lot of them are neurotoxins. They affect behavior, IQ, and then there's another like complete array of problems. And we've seen a huge growth in behavioral problems in children too. So it kind of makes you wonder a little bit, doesn't it? So if you can choose organic where you can, that's the gold standard. And that's what we do. We try and find as many organic products that we implement in our diet that we can. So you can't always find everything organic. I totally get that. And budget is always restricted, but if you're just even swapping out 1 or 2 items, it does make a difference. So don't feel like, oh, I can't do it all, but just doing a little bit makes a difference in terms of your level of exposure. And I guess that's probably like all my points. 6, I don't know if you have the slide with all the organic certifications that are a good way to look for verified certified organic products. So I've actually got some examples from our pantry even. So we can see BioGrow. That's probably, BioGrow is super lovely. They're probably one of my favorite certifications anyway, but they're often commonly found on Kiwi products, and that's a lovely, easy certification to follow. And then also you can see a lot of few other, the quality assurance is one that I frequently come across. And I'm trying to think, and I've got like a couple of international ones here as well that I found from our pantry. and this is ACO certified organic. I've got some balsamic dressing. This is actually the cleanest balsamic dressing that I've ever found.
Can
And
people see that I've got the five New Zealand
Yeah.
certification and verification logos up there?
yeah, it
Yes,
might,
we can see them, but it's not on slideshow, so it's not as big as it could be, Philippa.
yeah, but
Yes,
they're
I'm
kind
going
of,
to have to upskill on these things.
but ideally you want to be looking for those organic certifications because that gives you a surety that they are actually organic because they meet the standards basically, and they're not just making some sort of marketing claim as well, because there is a wee bit of that,
That's
Philippa,
better.
to say. Common one that is throughout our pantry. So that's how common it is in New Zealand in terms of looking for certifications as well. And I often frequently ask them questions around what they look at and test and things, and they are really lovely and really diligent and very careful about what they're approving, as Philippa would know. Yeah, so
Yeah. So also on that slide we had not just BioGrow and Assure Quality, which are the two largest New Zealand certifiers. There's also Demeter, which is the biodynamic one, which you'll see not just probably not very many New Zealand products, but there are some international imported ones also that have the Demeter, that's Demeter logo. And then Organic Farm NZ is a little round or Koru green one, which is the local New Zealand domestic only certification, and that's peer reviewed. Like, so you join a pod in your local area of growers or producers, and it just reduces the certification cost for people who are producing on quite a small scale, usually for the farmers market or their local shops. And then there's Huaparakore, which is not organic certification as such. They don't kind of do all the tick boxes in the same way, but it's a verification system. They go through a whole process as well, looking at all the different tikanga, looking at the whakapapa, the history of the land, yeah, all sorts of things like that. And that's a triangular thing you'll see on, for example, the Biofarm yogurt and Mills Farm
I
honey
might
products. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I might just add that the benefit of choosing organic, because this is a real problem with processed food, is that you actually are avoiding GMOs, so that their ingredients can't be GMO derived. So I think that's a really important point to make. And they've put in legislation recently that obscures even more so. The companies don't need to declare if an ingredient is GMO if it's imported. So I think that's kind of another key thing if you want to be avoiding GMOs. Choosing organic where you can is important. So I just thought I'd just add that additional point as well.
Yeah. Really, really good point. Thank you, Sarah. We have the gene technology bill here in New Zealand, which is just sitting, waiting, possibly could be passed. We need to keep the pressure on MPs to abandon it. It's just not going to be good for us, the environment, or anybody. The legislation that or regulation Sarah's talking about is Food Standards
Yeah,
Australia and New Zealand, which is the Trans-Tasman food standards setting body, and that has deemed that certain types of GE are totally fine and don't have to be declared in food. And a lot of these are processing aids, they're additives, but there's a whole list of about, I think it was up to about 90 different what they call food lines. So there might be, 10 different types of soy that are GE that are allowed in your food and in some way or another. So yeah, organic. Avoid GE by being organic, growing your own, sharing, yeah, your local farmers markets, yeah, neighborhood swaps, etc. It's all good. Okay. Oh, well, thank you very much, both of you, speakers. It's really good to hear. And you've got really good, advice and good research. I hope that people have learnt something from that. Now, welcome back, Charles. And Charles, if you maybe would like to pop your video back on and maybe just see if you can pick out any good questions from the chat that perhaps Alison or Sarah might be able to answer. That would be great. I think we've had a few.
I could still share Sarah's excellent slide about less is more. Would you like me to do that? I've got it primed up.
Yeah, sure.
Like Alison, yeah, definitely.
Yep. And I think this answers one of the questions, what processed foods are good or what processed foods are okay? And this is an easy test, which both of us have mentioned, but I think this picture really rams it home. On the left, you have a great list of ingredients, and on the right, there are hardly any ingredients. So that's a really easy test when you look at a
Mm,
packet of processed food in the supermarket. How many ingredients does it have? Apart
Mm,
from the actual nitpicking of the particular ingredients which I've mentioned, you can just go from the quantity. Less
mm.
is more.
And another thing I really like about when you've got a few ingredients that you recognize is you go, oh, I think I could make those snacker balls. They've got dates, peanuts, cacao powder. Yes, and you could experiment and make your own if you have the ingredients.
I used to do that with muesli. I used to see wonderful mueslis and be like, oh, I can make that. And I'd sort of mimic their ingredient list. And yeah, it's a great way to actually even reduce costs is by
Mm.
mimicking it yourself at home.
Alison, do you want to scroll through and come to that slide with the organic logos on? It'll be just good to have them there for people to recognize. Yeah, so that was Sarah's quick, simple, 6 simple steps.
Like,
Ah, yeah, there we are, organic certifications.
I think, Philippa, there was a question in there about why are there so many certifications? Hopefully, I've worded it right.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good question. It's all sort of historical, really. They've all come about. I mean, the organic certification has come about as a response to consumer demand, really. Like consumers wanted to know and wanted to have certainty that what they were buying was, in fact, produced in ways that were organic, were good for the soil, free of the nasties we've talked about, synthetic fertilizers and pesticides and all of those things. And so, yes, I mean, Demeter is an international one, so that arose in Europe. BioGrow started out in 1983 in New Zealand, and that was a collaboration of Soil and Health and a couple of other organisations, including the Biodynamic Association, actually. Assure Quality, the AQ sign there, that's the government one, MPI runs that. Um, yeah, and that started in about 2002. Organic Farm NZ sort of started up around the same time or a bit later, and that was in response to small scale producers saying, we can't afford to pay the fee to get certified that bigger you know multi-million dollar export industries are paying, and the Huapara Kore, of course, was kaupapa Māori initiative, and that's a bit different from um, organic certification as such. Yeah, but then of course you get all the other, you get ACO, Australian Certified Organic. You'll see, particularly in some of the Woolworths macro brand, um, EcoCert is another one from Europe. Yeah, there's heaps. But sooner or later, we're developing our own national standard that's going to be. I mean, the standards are all fairly similar for these. Don't get me wrong, but there's going to a national standard is being developed, and that will likely have its own mark. So yeah, it remains to be seen how that's going to play out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can I mention something else about if you buy a product that is certified organic, that means with most, if not all of these schemes, that if it's a processed food, they're not allowed to use certain additives. And
Hmm.
this is particularly the case with MSG,
Good
uh,
point.
with all its myriad names that are disguised. It's well known that a lot of people react to MSG. Some of it is really serious and life-threatening anaphylactic reactions, but some of it is mild, like a dry mouth or a headache or whatever. So a lot of people react to MSG in its different forms, and you may not be aware of that.
Mm.
I just noticed there was a question there about GE or GMO rennet. And I've actually we investigated and I actually emailed a number of cheese producers around New Zealand and asked about what type of rennet they use. So I do have that sitting on my website if you are interested, and that talks a lot about the microbial rennets and things like that and what the different types are available. So I don't know if that might answer someone's question in there as well that I spotted.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, the other thing is that in theory, if a cheese is certified organic, it can't be it can't have a GMO enzyme in it.
But the problem with that, Alison, I found, and this is just kind of like an intricacy, is that they can say that there is no GMO rennet left in it. Um, they can say there's no GMO microbes or anything left in it, and it's been removed. And so they can then say, no, it's not GMO anymore, even though it was processed in a GMO process and derived from GMO. As long as it doesn't have any of the remnants, or at least they claim there's no remnants left, then they can then call it, um, I guess, not GMO. So that's something important to note. So there are different rennets that are produced in different ways that kind of indicate whether or not there's any remnants left. And I think it's important to note that I was actually talking to GE, I'm now losing their Facebook name and I should know it better. But Honest GE, I was talking to them and they were talking about how that it's actually difficult to test it. So there's no real given necessarily test. And I'm currently in the background investigating that because it's of an interest point. And that the way the microbials work could also be changing, and they aren't necessarily testing for that either. And I found a lot of, like, say, Fonterra won't come back to me in terms of what they're actually using and specifically what their testing is. So that's just kind of like a sort of a finer detailed point just to make. It's not to say that organic isn't bad, but I've had the cheese barn, for instance, comment and message me and come back to me and tell me exactly what rennet they're using, and I'm satisfied that that is non-GMO. So I don't know. It's just unfortunate. If only Fonterra would get back to me, but we're trying.
Mm. Thank you for that, Sarah. Yes, I think that is the point about GE and no GE being left in the final product
Yeah,
is something that it's like, well, for me personally, it doesn't worry me. I mean, I don't want any GE in the process or the product. And I think a lot of people who are into organics don't want GE anywhere. That they're not just concerned about the final product. They're concerned about how it's produced. They're concerned about, for example, whether the sugar comes from, you know, high fructose corn syrup or GE corn, GE sugar beet, and what
Mm.
that's doing to the environment. It's not just our own bodies and our health. It's the environmental concerns about how these foods are produced as well.
Oh, definitely. And
Um,
they don't know the long-term consequences and how these GMO-derived microbes interact with the environment. They have no clue.
mm,
And so it's quite damning. And that's why we need to sort of advocate for not having this bill come through into New Zealand, because it's poorly, it's basically unrestricted. Someone can go into, people kind of joke, but they can actually go into the garage and create a microbe with a test kit and could let it out, and no one would even be able to trace it and
mm,
impacts of that. And you're right, Philippa. Like from a standpoint, I don't want any GMO process in my food at all, even if
mm,
it's GMO led
yeah.
stuff. But they don't really 100% know how to test it, because I'm struggling to find out how to test it. So that's like a very interesting kind of point.
Mm,
A question about um, glyphosate that somebody put up. Um,
yeah.
so the concern is about glyphosate and whether this, how controlled is this in New Zealand? The alarming thing is that we suspect that more and more glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup, that's the most popular common brand name, has been used in New Zealand as a post-harvest desiccant. In other words, it's been sprayed on our wheat if it's not organic.
Mm.
And the group No More Glyphosate, who have quite a large social media following now, have been very active in testing. And on our website, we've got one of their results. 6 out of 8 loaves tested contained glyphosate. So you can look at that, but you can also investigate No More Glyphosate, Instagram, Facebook, and website.
Mm,
And they're doing a lot of valuable work in that domain. The
mm,
government um, has the belief that um, glyphosate is not a concern and it's difficult to test for it anyway. It's a separate process to testing for other pesticides. And they're quite ignoring the fact that it's a neurotoxin, just like chlorpyrifos, which has recently stopped being used as of
mm,
January on our food, but you'll still find it in imported frozen berry products, probably. Yeah, so like chlorpyrifos, which has been banned in 44 countries, glyphosate and fluoride are all neurotoxins. In other words, they're brain damaging, along with certain coal tar derivatives, forming artificial colors. Some of them are also brain damaging. And this is why some children really react off the wall
mm,
to these additives. Um, the, and the concerning thing is that our regulatory authority do not acknowledge neurotoxins. If something is a neurotoxin, it's not counted. So they
mm,
seriously underestimate their risk assessments.
mm. So again, organic is best. Avoid glyphosate and other pesticide residues. Yeah.
Yeah,
Charles, any other questions there that you can pick
Yeah.
out that?
Yeah, there's a question from Sammy that is, if it's not organic, does soaking with baking soda actually help with removing pesticides from fruits and vegetables? And this is a question I've asked myself and found that the answer is usually it's complicated.
yeah.
But
That's
yeah, I'd like
that's
to
true.
hear what
Yeah.
the
So from
panel
the
says.
research that I've done into it, baking soda, a mixture of baking soda and water, if you soak whatever it is for about 15, 20 minutes, you'll get rid of some pesticides, the acidic type pesticides, but not all of them, because some pesticides go right through.
Mm.
And the other thing that you can do is a mixture of vinegar and water, same thing, a similar thing.
Yeah.
And I've read research as well that abrasive rubbing does remove some pesticides as well, and at least reduces the levels.
Yeah, if you peel something, it reduces the levels
Yeah,
that sit just below the surface. It's
yeah.
not practical for something like strawberries, though.
No, you
Just
can't.
just avoid non-organic strawberries. I've done so much research that if somebody presents me with non-organic strawberries, I just quietly don't have any.
Did you know I actually have been looking at recent data from the Total Diet study in New Zealand, like their recent releases, just late last year, and strawberries are still showing up as one of those ones that are got high levels of residues in it, and that's like of pesticides, and that's specific to New Zealand as well. So it's definitely one that you want to be eating organic, and you're probably very wise, Alison, to decline strawberries.
If you look on our website, our most popular entry that everybody goes to is New Zealand's Dirty Dozen, which is slightly different to the American version. In New
Mhm.
Zealand, we don't do so many tests. The total diet study, for example, is only done every 6, 8, or even 10 years. And and for most of the samples, they just test 8 samples of
Mm.
whatever it is, 8 samples of white wine, 8 samples of bread, whatever, 8 samples of strawberries. And then they do some other tests as well. The pesticide residue surveillance programs, which are every 1 to 2 years on average, but that's very limited data from there. So that's concerning pesticides. I noticed there was a question about animal vaccinations. Uh,
Yes.
I, Charles
Dylan,
has answered that one, I think, in the
um,
chat.
yeah, I answered it, and but Dylan has yeah, some concerns that I think would be interesting to the attendees. So it's about using about how under certain conditions in New Zealand, um, vaccines are allowed for animals when it's specifically justified to avoid animal suffering, or or I mean, like when there's a specific reason to do it, and it's not just done proactively across the board. All animals are vaccinated. However, overseas, that is the case in different organic certification systems, like in the US and in Europe. They're both more tolerant of vaccines in certified organic meat production than we are here in New Zealand currently. And um, yeah, so do Sarah and Allison have any comments on animals that have been given vaccines?
no, I can't unfortunately comment on that, but that's interesting to hear, Charles, that it's less likely to happen in New Zealand than some other countries. So that's yet another argument for supporting New Zealand. If you do buy meat, especially pork, make sure that it comes from New Zealand, because a lot of bacon, for example, a lot of pork products are come from other countries.
Mm. Mm. Oh wow. Now it's just after 8:30 by my reckoning, and we said we'd finish the webinar around now. So I know that there are heaps more questions and lots of labeling issues that we could talk about. And I hope we can address these in future webinars. Um, so I'd like to just wrap up here, and we'll copy the chat, and this webinar will go up on our YouTube channel, Soil and Health NZ YouTube channel. Um, at a later date, in a week or two, probably. So if people didn't manage to attend tonight, they can watch it later. And I'd like to thank very much our two panelists, Alison White and Sarah Reddington. It's really great to hear from you, and thank you for presenting so clearly a lot of the issues to do with labelling and choosing healthier food. Thank you to Charles for helping out with the chat, and thank you, Tracy, there, our admin person. And from myself, we really want to thank all Soil and Health members and supporters and donors, and we'd love you to join if you haven't already, or donate to our cause, which will help continue this kind of work. So thank you very much, everyone. Good night. Por Maria.
Bye-bye.